with face of a stranger. Quiet observer, never get too close. I see the world, but it through this window. Another side to see, I'm ready to know. Not every story's written on a sleeve. Some stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. He's from the city, she's from the south. Two different chapters told miles out. Their back row living in his White House. So many stories that I need to know. Not every story's written on a sleeve. Some stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. So many stories right in front of me. Some people climb to heights I've never seen. Too many falling down off their feet. These stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why you're the way you are. Why you're the way you are. Why you're the way you are.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Silver Sunday on this October 4th. Welcome. And if you're a regular here, you know what the past couple of weeks have been. Give me 30 seconds. No, I don't even 30 seconds. I need to share this on Facebook so people will know that we are live. So, okay, share it to my timeline. All right. So yeah, thanks for joining us, everybody. It's been a heck of a heck of a couple of 18 days for our Kickstarter, but we made the goal and then some. We made 3 stretch goals, so part of what we are going to get, I'll bring out visual aids because this is comics and we all love visual aids. Here we go. I have a bookmark in here somewhere. So this is not the bookmark that you'll be getting, but this is the bookmark that came with Twilight Graham and Divinity. We're gonna get a cat and mouse and Trump's bookmark because of the stretch goals achieved. We are also going to get a trading card for. We're going to get 2 trading cards, one for cat and mouse and one for Trump's. A cat and mouse will be, of course, the 3rd in our series. We've got a series of cat and mouse trading cards going. This is the first one, and then this is the second one. And you can see they're actually numbered on the back, 1 and 2. The 3rd one will be cat, and it's already drawn. And the front part of the card is finished. The back part of the card is not. Kevin West did the artwork for it, and it is gorgeous because obviously it's Kevin West. And oh yeah, then there's the scan of. You're going to get a digital scan. I say all the appropriate tiers, of course, are going to get a digital scan. Oh, that's not it. Of this comic that I'm trying to get in my hands right now, of the very first published issue of Cat and Mouse. As you can see, this is from 1989.
Jesus.
Right. Pete, you didn't have to say that aloud.
Oh, sorry.
He was thinking that.
Yeah, I wish you would have thought that more quietly.
He was
just being religious.
They had paper back then.
Not a stone tablet.
Yeah, so I expected you to say like 1996, 1998.
Yeah. No, sorry. Anyway, before I was so rudely reminded of the number of years that my
it's in color as well. Look at that.
It is in color.
Who knew?
Yes, and this is the special. This is what's special about this edition because this was published in color, and then Malibu Comics picked it up, and it went all black and white. So the entirety of the run at Malibu was in black and white, and this is the first published volume of Cat and Mouse, and it is in color. So we're going to scan this. We're going to try to get it looking as good as we possibly can in the scan, and then we're also going to scan the handwritten script to this very same issue. So you'll get to see what the original volume 1 Cat and Mouse in color look like, as well as the script. And that's going to be for all of the, it's digital, obviously, it's the scan. So everyone will get the PDF of that. But mostly we want to say thank you so very much for all of your support, your pledges, your shares, everyone you shared and you helped us. We had an amazing push the last day to get us to that 3rd stretch goal, and I just want to make sure that you know that we are so very thankful that you believe in us enough to put your money behind us. And so we're always going to work hard to make sure we deliver comics that you can enjoy. Our goal at Silverline is to make comics that when you're done and you finish, you read page last, you go, that was fun. That was pretty cool. Yeah. When's the next one coming out? Right?
Yep.
That's what we want. And so that's what we're going to always work hard to do. So yeah, there's that. So let me take a moment to introduce everybody, or let everybody introduce themselves. I am going to bail after this because, quite frankly, 2 reasons. Number 1, I'm flat wore out from the Kickstarter. It's pretty exhausting. I put in some very late hours the last couple of days, posting and tweeting and Facebooking and getting images and attaching them to the tweets and sending messages and sending emails. I hope my boss isn't listening. I'm behind on grading, and I've got a bunch of grades that are due tomorrow. So I have Coca-Cola in my class and I am I've got to get to grading. So yeah, I got to bail, but I'm gonna leave you in very capable hands. I am Roland Mann. I am the writer of Trumps that you can see just over my shoulder there. I taped it to the thing in the back when we were doing this other one, which I said I need a pipe. I'm gonna have to get me a pipe. And I'm the writer of Trumps. I'm the writer of Cat and Mouse, and kind of the chief wrangler here. I got Silverline cards that were designed by Kurtis, by the way. And my card says head honcho, so I guess that's a title that I'll carry around. But yeah, so because I know he'll forget. Brett is here. You can't see him, and you won't hear him ever. He whispers in our ears, and if it ever looks like we're going and answering voices, we probably are, and it's probably Brett, and you just can't. He's probably making wisecracks, and you just can't hear him. But Brett's the one. He's our technician. He runs all the stuff behind the scenes. Make sure that you get to see images that you're supposed to see. Make sure that you see us. I think Pete's going to be streaming some artwork, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
Sure, why not?
It's not much to look at the moment, but yeah.
It's okay. It's the process. It's enjoyable to watch. So, are you working on that thing that you sent earlier?
Yeah, because
cool.
Because my computer crashed this afternoon, and I hadn't saved in a few hours, and I lost it all. So the buildings that I had spent a lot of time building, I'm now doing again. So yeah, that's very, very frustrating day.
I'm sorry to hear that. Computers are very frustrating.
That's the life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't, because you're using a tablet, right? Yeah. So I don't know how the tablets work, but I know you can set like your documents, because I obviously have had this issue before in Microsoft Word. You can set it to save. You can time it. You can set it where
it's meant
to
auto save every hour. And I'm pretty sure that's it's something's happened, and I've lost a lot of work, but it's only the buildings, so I'm doing them again.
And they're going to be even better this time.
Yeah. I hope you didn't put as much work into the buildings on this page as you did on this page that you were working on last week.
Yeah.
In which you were covering them up with the figures.
You
put all this work into these buildings, and then you were putting these figures in front of them.
I just realised I'm going to stop doing the buildings. I've got another figure to draw, so yeah, I'm not gonna. Let's figure that out.
Well, that'll be because I know what it is. That's going to be an interesting and a very cool piece for everybody to watch stream tonight. I think Roberta will be on a little bit later, so she may be able to stream some colors as well. Y'all be nice to her. Me and Pete and Tommy are scheming, so yep. What? I heard a whisper.
Uh-oh.
I heard that too.
Yeah, somebody whispered.
Something. It wasn't here.
Oh, John's looking off camera, so maybe somebody's
trouble.
whispering sweet nothing in his ears.
Yeah.
Hey, baby, come to bed. Get off your screen.
There wouldn't even be. I would have just been like, "Bye, guys."
So anyway, Brett, thank you. I won't be here at the end of the stream to thank you, but appreciate all your work behind the scenes. Guys, I appreciate all you, everything you do. I am going to bail because I do have student scripts to read and essays to grade and presentations to watch. So you guys have a great stream. Kurtis, thank you so much for taking. I'm gonna I'm gonna pass the mantle on to you. There you go. There you go. Get it.
Yeah, he's got to get it. Yay!
Yeah, that's right. The magic of Zoom. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Y'all have a great stream.
Take care, Roland.
See ya.
Take care, Roland. See you later.
All right, so let's go ahead. I guess we'll just pick up from there and introduce ourselves.
We haven't done that yet, have we?
No, we haven't done that yet. So I'll start with myself. I'm Kurtis Fujita. I'm the creative director at Silverline, the editor on the Kayla series. I'm also an artist with experience in comic books, video games, and animation. And I'm going to hand it over to Pete.
Oh.
Pete, if you will.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Peter Clinton. I'm the penciler on Champion and Miss Fury. Although that's not what we're going to call it. I understand we're going to call it something else. But that's I'm finishing that up over the next 2 weeks, and then it goes off for inks and colours, and hopefully on the Kickstarter at some point soon. But yeah, I'm just a penciler, and tonight I'll be I'm working on the rough for the cover for that book. So I'll start streaming that in a short bit.
Great.
Who's next?
All right. Let's have John. John, please.
John.
Hi everybody. I'm the inker on Friar Rush. I even somehow managed to do a variant cover for that book. I also do work. I've done work for Dynamite and Upper Deck for the Marvel properties. Other than that, I'm just the resident Viking.
Exactly. And a vampire.
Like,
and a vampire.
really looking at how white that freaking hair is, too. Feel old.
So I guess I am last. My
Okay.
name's Aaron Humphres, and I am the penciler on Friar Rush, which was the second to last Kickstarter we did. And also do my own comic, Godlings, which you can find at Webtoons and at my store. I think all those links are on the bottom. And yeah, so I pretty much draw and write stuff. Write my own stuff, but I'm hoping to be doing more stuff for Silverline soon, beyond just streaming with all you guys.
Definitely. Well, good. Well, everybody. Don't forget, before we start, we have our merch store. On Zazzle, there's lots of cool things. The one that I have my eyes on is the cat and mouse mug.
Yeah.
The mug. Yeah, you drink out of a mug. A cub, you said. No, but it looks really cool. So just keep an eye on that. But today's subject is indie comics, independent comic books. So we're going to talk about what independent comic books we like, what qualifies as an independent comic book, and just kind of discuss that. So figured we'd just start straight up with the definition of an independent comic book, because people have kind of a wide, varied definition of it. Anybody want to chime in what your thoughts are on what defines an independent comic book versus a mainstream comic book?
It's funny. I'll jump in because working with other independent creators and stuff. It's always weird when I read in these Image, biggest independent creator, and I'm like, I don't know. And that straddles that line. It's like, yeah, but they got TV shows and stuff. So how independent are they? I don't know. I would have to. It's a hard definition. I mean, we are independent, but we're also a company. And a lot of people would clarify that if you're a company, you're not. Independent is like one or two people doing it. So I don't know. I'm still kind of confused with the definition in my head.
I mean, I was thinking about it, but I always figured anything that's not Marvel and DC, I just threw in the indie category. But
yeah, most people do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're more indie if you're the creator owns the character as opposed to the publisher. So I guess Silverline is the publisher owns the characters, except in is it own all the every character?
No, I think like Divinity is Barb, and
So So I'm working on a publisher's project. So I'd say you could say I'm not an indie because it's publisher owned, whereas something else.
I mean, Mike Mignola owns Hellboy. And he would be considered indie, even though Hellboy is incredibly popular. I would still consider him.
And it's under Dark Horse.
But it's published by, but Dark Horse doesn't own
the rights to it. Yeah,
right. And that's where Image is still an indie. Company because they own their creation.
Yeah.
Whereas Marvel and DC, you don't own them; they own them.
Yeah.
Well, then there's the Vertigo line, right? Like Vertigo at one point, not now, but at one point, I mean, because I don't see Funk now, but Vertigo had some type of ownership or some portion of ownership with the characters.
Yes, yeah.
So that's kind of that gray area. I kind of feel like sometimes there's independent in terms of like the actual style or the type of story that's being told. Some people quantify as that, and then there's also the business end. I think some people think if it's superhero, it's not indie, which I don't agree with. What do you folks have a take on that? Do you feel it straddles the line?
I think most independent comic books tend not to be superhero because it's a dominated market by by two big publishers, isn't it? But you can do. I mean, Invincible's technically a superhero comic.
But
Yeah.
he's independent.
Yeah.
It's funny, I guess where I saw it independent is more like small business versus corporations and like the regular society. So that's why, like, when it comes to like Image and Dark Horse, they're technically, I guess you would consider them independent, like indie, but they seem more like corporations. So I would be like, well, they're not small business, like say I am, who do my own comic, or so that's in my head. But in reality, I think John's right. I think the idea, if you can own your character in some way, then that's more independent.
Yeah.
At least it feels that way.
Image
Before we go too much, Fred.
I was just going to say, Image is, it's Top Cow, it's McFarland, it's Larson, so it's all these different things, like whatever Kirkman likes to call his stuff. It's all separate entities that are under the Image umbrella.
Yeah.
Sure. And before we go on, I know we usually want to get started on this a little bit earlier, but let's have Peter, you're going to show some of your art. You want to
Yes.
pop
Sorry,
it up there? Let's do that. So the viewers have something to look at.
I'm tired of looking at my face, Peter. Let's look at your art.
It's not much to look at the moment, I'm afraid. So,
Come on.
You can see I lost all my buildings. So.
I like that. I was thinking about independent. It's kind of like, way back in the day in the 90s, there was like this whole thing with alternative music, right? And it was like kind of this hip thing to say, well, music, like, I don't like pop, I like alternative music. But when alternative music became mainstream, then was it still alternative? And I feel like independent kind of straddles that line, right? Like when it's, an Image superhero comic book, you kind of straddles that line, at least in the court of public opinion, as to whether it's independent or not. Do you guys?
Yeah.
Kind of along those lines.
I think it's more just. I think there's various definitions. I don't even know if there's even a hard. I'd be curious to know if you asked like Image guys, would they probably consider themselves independent? But a lot of the people from like Marvel and DC will not jump ship, but will do stuff for Image. So they'll be working for non-independent, doing independent stuff for Image at the same time. They sometimes do that. Mostly writers will write something for Image, then rewriting other stuff. So I guess you could dip your toes in either water.
Do you folks have a preference? Some people feel that they're more like independent books versus mainstream, or you folks feel you're kind of in between, or what's everybody's thoughts on that?
I'm much more independent just because I write and draw my own stuff. And I just like to, I feel like Marvel and stuff, like I can learn from them, but I always like to read stuff like from guys who are doing the things I'm doing. They kind of see what they're doing and what they're up to. I feel there's also much more energy in a lot of independent books than there are in Marvel and DC sometimes, just because they're doing it because they really want to. Not saying the guys at Marvel and DC are doing it because they really want to, but sometimes it kind of does become more work for hire. So I don't know. I guess I feel that.
Well, I would actually sit here and say there's not as much holding back an indie creator compared to somebody working for like Marvel and DC.
Sure. Yeah.
So you pretty much have open range with what you can do with the characters. If you decided we're just going to kill off one of the main ones. We're gonna take this down this road. And we're going to ride it hard. You can do that where you can't do that without getting 18 OKs by all these people in line over at Marvel.
Yeah, that's true. Because I actually did kill off some of my main characters, and I seem to be. I don't know if I'm upsetting or will be upsetting some of my people who comments on webtoons and other stuff. Like, he's coming back, right? And I'm just quiet. What can I say? I'm just like, no, but I don't really want to ruin your day. We're like, no, he's not. I'm like, fine, I'm not reading your stuff. So I guess you'll find out when the story ends. So
well, it's kind of, I feel like it's like same in film, right? There's that kind of idea that independent film, you kind of can be more gritty, you can kind of do your own thing, but as the budget increases, right, it becomes film by committee. There's a really cool documentary, I think it's on Amazon Prime right now, about this director Richard Stanley. He did some horror movies in the early 90s, like Hardware and some other ones, and he ended up putting together the movie The Island of Dr. Moreau, and it's about how he started doing it. He got Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer attached to it, and then he got booted out of his own film, and it became its own thing dealing with company politics and how the movie changed,
That would
over
be
time.
interesting. What is this called again?
It's called, like, I think, Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau.
Okay.
But it's interesting just to see how, you know, he starts out as this really kind of up and coming guy, but then he gets into the corporate system, and, you know, it's just hard to make it happen in that arena, you know. So
It
well,
it go ahead. I was gonna say it's funny because that's where kind of like the money is more in corporation. You get more marketing and more push, but you do tend to unfortunately sometimes give up a little bit of that freedom that you had making it in the first place.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Exactly. Well, does anybody kind of segue into, like, favorite books that are independent? Anybody have any specific independent comic books that they would recommend or inspiring or that they like?
I have mostly the stuff I read is independent, but like you know, I was a big fan, like, you know, Sin City, Hellboy. I really liked the Mouse Guard.
Okay.
Oh, Mouse Guard was cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Was really different.
Yeah, that was really different. I really enjoyed Mouse Guard. There was a series, they never finished it, called The Red Star, which is really fantastic.
What was that about?
The Red Star was basically about an alternative Russia, like a war in Russia, but they would use like magic and technology. You can find it. They even made a video game off it. That was kind of cool. It was like this really independent where they would do CGI, and the artwork's fantastic. They were kind of coming up, and then apparently I heard there was like infighting. So the series gets to where it looks like they go to the final battle, and then it just stopped. So I guess you can kind of infer what's going to happen. I mean, it's worth getting for what it was, but it was kind of a bummer that you just kind of like, you guys couldn't just hold on to the last second. But yeah, it's called The Red Star. It's fantastic read. It came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I think IDW now is publishing, printing some of their stuff. And of course, I keep hoping if they reprint, they'll just like, yes, we're going to finish it. But no word yet. At least I haven't heard anything. So.
Do that. That's cool. How about you, Pete? Any independent comic books that you like or you'd recommend?
I think one of the first independent comics I probably read was Bone. Just because it looked really different. It looked like, you know, I really loved Calvin and Hobbes. And I thought, well, that looks sort of like Calvin and Hobbes because it's not that typical superhero animation illustration. So I'll give that a read. I really love that. And more and more, I've just been, I sort of get my independent stuff from Image, really. When I order through previews, I go to Image and I get loads of stuff. Just see what creators, like what they're making. The guys who have been at Marvel and DC now go on to do their own thing. Most recently, Once and Future by Dan Moore and Kieran Gillen. I don't know if you've read that. But that's based on the Arthurian myth, like present day stuff. It's really, really cool. And Dan Moore's art is amazing. What else? Sea of Stars. That's a recent one. I'm trying to think more. Some older stuff. There's probably loads.
Yeah, that's what I run into.
Well, they come out like, you know, like 3-6 issues, don't they? And then they're gone because these guys can't do stuff.
Well, I see somebody in the live stream just commented. Dustin Wallace. Dustin's asking. So you guys have all done some work in independent comics. It's not too far off topic. How did you guys kind of break into the independent comic industry? So, that's a perfectly germane. Let's ask Aaron. So how did you break into the indie comic scene?
It's funny. I mean, I've been making my own comic books since high school, 94. I mean, nothing that would like any of the big publishers would take. But I think the internet is what allowed me to break in more. I think without the internet connectivity, I would sell stuff at local conventions. But there's a huge independent scene in the internet and just going to conventions. It's kind of funny. It's weird. I almost say like, I can say like, do you have to break into independent? I almost say no. If you're making and putting it out there, you just make it and put it out there, you're in. I mean, and obviously, you know, I don't know too many people who have like just a huge rush of, you know, money coming in, but just putting your stuff out there means basically throwing your hat in the ring for the most part. Now, whether or not breaking into a company, I mean, I think we've talked a story about Silverline and stuff, but yeah, just just technically making your stuff and either like print on demand, like Kablam or something, going to conventions, putting it out there and trying to sell it. And welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Welcome to the, the effort, the hustle to sell books and stuff. Yeah.
It's easy to break into independent comics because, like we say, you just make your own comic. You're in.
Yeah.
Welcome to the
There you
club. In terms of getting picked up by an independent publisher,
How about your story, Pete? I mean, like specifically for you. I mean, you came from the Kubert school, but
yeah, I went the more expensive route.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we were talking about earlier, actually, before we came on live stream, I needed that that regimented, just stop doing everything else and just draw all day, and that's what the school gave me. Just I didn't have to go to work part-time or do anything else. I was just doing that full-time, and it's just drawing, and you learn so much so quickly doing that. But that's just doing that doesn't get you into Marvel, DC, these big guys. It helps you reach new people just because you're doing so much work and you're putting so much stuff out there. But there's no other shortcut even getting into independent guys. If your stuff's any good, they'll take notice.
Right.
If you don't make the effort and you don't try to improve, you just figure, well, I'm going to go to the school, so when I get out, I'm a graduate of a prestigious comic book school. I'm going to get a job doing comic books. That's not the way it works. You've got to put the effort in, and the best thing to do is just make your own comics, do webtoons. It's the easiest thing to do. Just do it at your own pace, and just throw it up there for the world to see. And if it's people will see it, and more importantly, is independent publishers will see you're making stuff and you're committed to doing it. And the good thing about school is you make loads of connections, not just with publishers but your fellow students. So I met Roland through a student who was a year above me, Alex Gallimore. So Alex introduced me to Roland, and I wouldn't have had that if I didn't go to the school, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's almost the networking is almost when you're going through that journey of becoming a professional. You don't know where that next person's going to wind up. Case in point, Alex.
No, that's it. One of your classmates might end up as an editor at a big publisher, and you're like, well, stay friendly with everyone, whether you like them or not.
Yeah.
At least up front, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It's funny. I would almost say me breaking in a little bit. I made 2 kids books, which are more like cartoon books, and those are published by Action Lab, which is an independent company.
Yeah.
So I, strangely enough, I guess maybe broke in more in the independence through kids books because they're a comic book publisher that decided to publish my kids books. Go figure. But one of the things they did ask, which I thought was really, maybe a good thing to take away, is when I showed him my book, he asked, "Is this complete? Is this done?" And I said, "Yes." He's like, "Good." Yeah. That's a huge thing. If you show them a few pages, because they'll be like, "Is he going to complete it?" So if you can show them completed work, they're more likely, because then that means like, well, then we're ready to go to print right now, and that's an incentive for them if they like what you're showing them.
Yeah, I think even image require you to.
John, what about yourself? What are your thoughts on how you broke into the independent comic book scene? One of our viewers, Dustin, asked us that.
Well, I mean, I was one of those guys who I have to say probably about 6, 7, maybe 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. I decided that I was going to, after trying to do the whole typical, family thing and stuff like that, I feel like, what? I haven't drawn in years. Let me get back into drawing. And then I decided, what? I'm actually going to go after what I wanted to do when I was growing up, which was be in comics. Mm-hmm. And so I actually I finally went to my first con probably 6, 7 years ago. And that's when I met Dean Zachary and Mitch Faust and Jim Hall. and they told me some things. You know, they looked over my work because I had my portfolio with me. Hey, look at my stuff. You know, I want to get better. And the next con that came around, I showed them newer stuff, and they were like, "Oh, you actually listen."
Oh crap!
Right?
You know, I think about it now, and it's like I can remember Mitch Faust's face when he was like, "Oh, he listened." He was like, "Oh, he listened," and then so he started going into some other stuff, and same with Dean, and then eventually it just got around to where I did a couple things with Mitch. I did something with Mitch, and then for an anthology just out of the blue. After I did,
what was the name of it? The anthology.
it was Not on One Comics anthology, and me and Mitch did a short story in there called Back to Earth.
Okay.
And then after that, I met Roland through Dean, and Dean goes, hey Roland, you need to take a look at his inks. You need to take a look at his inks. And then finally, Roland meandered on over and decided to take a gander, and that was when I was actually tabling at a con. Of course, this is the course over a few years, and finally, and that con was probably 2-3 years ago now.
I think anthologies are a really good way to break into anything. I've done 2 of those. Just do 10 pages or 5 pages, whatever it might be. But they usually get, there's usually an independent publisher attached.
Yeah. But that Roland pretty much asked me right then and there, hey, you want to ink this? I think it'd be fun.
Funny how opportunities happen like that, right? I mean, it seems like it's a flat line, and then just something jumps when there's an opportunity. It seems to come up. For me, the way I got into it was that, of course, most of you know, but if you haven't heard it, I worked at Malibu Comics with Roland. But I got my break when I was like 15, and I just knew I wanted to get into comic books. I had a tour of the comic book company, Malibu Comics. At the time, it was called Malibu Graphics, and talking to my stepdad, he said, "Hey, you should try and get an internship there." So I said, "Okay," and had my mom drop me off at the place because I couldn't drive, and tried to go in and meet Chris Ulm, who was the editor-in-chief, and of course, the receptionist didn't take kindly to a 15-year-old kid trying to storm the gates of a comic book company. So after I was kicked out, I was sitting in the parking lot and waiting for my mom to pick me up, and saw the editor-in-chief's car pull to the parking lot, and then just took off on foot, chased him down, and said I wanted to work in comic books and I clean toilets. I literally said, I'll clean your toilets. I'll do anything to work in comic books. And he said, yeah, you're hired. And we walked right back in, past the receptionist, and started work the next day. And
that's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. And we know that we're all of a certain age, or we all know you don't always get those opportunities. So
yeah, especially when so many comic book companies now don't even, have studios. Now it's becoming rare and rare for companies that have studios, mostly work remote like we do and stuff. So there's no such thing as guys cleaning their toilet anymore, unless you come to their house directly, clean their toilet, I guess.
Yeah. I'm here for my 5:30.
Yeah.
I think the thing too is the thing that I'm finding more because we were talking before the show. Sometimes I feel we should air the stuff before the show and after the show. We get some really good conversations, right?
We do.
But I think and Dustin just that's pretty epic luck and determination. Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah.
But I think it's also trying to find like-minded individuals, trying to find a publishing company that is in the vein of what you want. I think that's a huge thing. It's like if you're a horror comic book artist, you may not want to apply to something that's more of a kid-friendly one. And sometimes it's also a matter of just finding a company or individuals that appreciate what you're doing. The cool thing nowadays is even if you can't find a place, you go to like 20 different places and they say, hey, you're not good enough, or we don't like what you're doing. Like Pete said, okay, fine, I'll publish it myself, or I'll put it online. You know, if you
Yeah.
can't find the people that are going to put it out there, you can do it yourself. I mean, that's what's so cool now. I mean, success varies, but you know, it's democratizing it.
Right.
That's really cool. Yeah.
You can put this stuff, but it's funny. It's again, I've talked about this with other. I think even on here, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, you had the ability to put all your stuff on there, but so does everybody else.
Yeah.
But it gets very crowded very fast. And you're like, where did all these people come from?
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you know, it's funny. There was one guy, this cracks me up, you know, especially social media. This one guy added me. I forget, I won't say his name, but one guy added me, and he saw that I was working with Silverline, and he has his own comic book kind of thing he's doing.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, he's trying to get my attention. Well, that's cool, but he starts posting, like, I had my wife and I had like our 4-year anniversary pictures, you know, on Facebook, and here's this in our wedding, and the guy comments, congratulations, and then the next thing he says is, he goes, independentcomicscene.com, and puts his website like in my it's like, yeah, so I couldn't resist. I replied, I said, thank you so much, SilverlineComics.com, you know, so you know.
there's a time and place. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's funny because I have, you know, I post my stuff online. I have had some people on social media, you know, I'm willing to give advice, whatever, but I think some people think like, well, you're the successful comic book guy, and I'm like, no, I just made it and hit the upload button. I'm not like, so like, that's like, how do you make it? And I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. I'm still figuring that. I mean, you know, as far as like, you know, making it big or whatever, I'll still work, you know, figuring that out. But I know a lot of the younger people, and I understand that. I mean, I give what advice I've learned and stuff, without trying to discourage them too much.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing about the whole independent scene is sometimes it can be misconstrued as, okay, that's the minor leagues, right? But then you have somebody like look at Frank Miller, you know, Dark Knight Returns, Daredevil, all this stuff, and then he hops back, and you could say Sin City was, for all intents and purposes, like, you know, an independent comic book. You know, Martha Washington Goes to War, independent comic book. So I think it's also a matter of what type of stories somebody's trying to tell. You know,
and I think that's one thing, if anything, the independent market is helping comic books, is they're really starting to develop a lot more genres. I mean, now when I go and look in the comic rack, it's not like DC little independent. Now it's like DC mixed with tons of different titles.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's
absolutely. And then now with you know, crowdfunding, which of course that's our bread and butter. You know, I mean, there's a cool opportunity not only for you to get the book out there, but to get it literally in somebody's hands. You know.
Yeah.
And more and more, that looks like the way the market's going. You know, so that's pretty cool. You know. You know, talking about Frank Miller, is there any? This kind of be an interesting kind of category. What mainstream people have you read something that's independent that they've done, or that kind of had an effect on you, or anything of significance?
I like, you know, Sin City and stuff. I read John Byrne's Next Men, the next one. It always sounds like X-Men, and that one's really. And he came back and finished it like after. God, I think it was out to 12 years or something. IDW let him come. He actually finished the series. I was like, I didn't think it would ever be finished. I just wrote it off. And then he's like, we're finishing it. I'm like, seriously? Like, now I got to go dig it back out and reread it again because it's been a while. But yeah, so there's definitely a few that I like in the independent wise. I'm forgetting. I thought George Perez did something independent, but now I don't think he did. Yeah. So yeah,
he did something for Malibu that was kind of out there. Malibu had this one called Bravura, and he had a book called, I think it was like Sax and Violins. I think it was something like Sax and Violence. Yeah, he did that, and there was also a book by Howard Chaykin that was kind of cool called Power and Glory. Which was like this Cyrano de Bergerac superhero comic book where the superhero had no powers, and it was just this black ops guy doing all the work behind the scenes to make it look like he had the powers. It's kind of cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think I don't even know if he works mainstream. I think he's already say independent, but it's like Terry Moore. He did Strangers in Paradise and all of his stuff.
Yeah, I guess that's
He's one of the rare that has made it as an independent, like Jeff Smith, and kind of stayed independent. But has been able to make a living off it, as far as I know. I mean, I think he just. But yeah, I like a lot of his stuff, and I usually try to read. So, and it's funny, I like some of his work. Some of his stuff's hit or miss for me, but it is something I always pick up something of his if I can. So
definitely. How about you, Pete? Any specific independent books that stand out? People that went back from mainstream, kind of double back into.
I literally, Jonathan Hickman and Rick Remender, they do a lot of independent stuff.
Yeah.
East to West and Black Science. And as I say, I follow the creators, so I will literally pick up anything they put out because I love everything they do. And so even if it seems a bit weird to me, I was like, I don't know what's going on in this, but I'll keep picking it up. So yeah.
Yeah, for me it was my favorite indies were like I loved Love and Rockets by the Hernandez brothers. That
yeah.
The storytelling was so different. The draftsmanship was just absolutely insane. I mean, you know, to me it was like looking at an old black and white film where you can almost get a sense of color from the black and white, from the contrast. You know,
yeah.
It's just and it's still going to this day. And the funny thing about it is like. One of my many day jobs over the years, I was working at a courthouse, and there was this lady I worked with, and she said, "Oh, you can draw." I was sketching, you know, on break. And I said, "Oh yeah, I can draw. I worked on some stuff with this." Well, her last name was Hernandez. Turned out her brothers are Jaime and Gilbert Hernandez.
Oh wow!
You know, and when I found that out, I was like almost embarrassed. Like, "Oh God, why'd you look at my sketch?" I mean, like the Hernandez brothers are like, so. It was pretty cool. And I asked her about it. She goes, "Oh yeah, my mom used to buy them comic books. She's the one that got them into it, and they were always drawing, and you know, so pretty."
That's cool. Did you ever get to meet him or anything?
No, but I might try and pull some favors soon. You know, you know, it's kind of like they say, never meet your heroes. For me, it's because if it's somebody I really like, I get nervous. You know,
Yeah.
I remember when the Japanese manga artist Rumiko Takahashi came to San Diego Con back in the day. She did Ranma Half and Lum and all this stuff. Yeah. So she came to San Diego, and I was with Roland at Comic Con for Malibu Comics, and I went to her signing, and so I got her to draw a picture for me and all that. I was so nervous when I left. I walked into the partition wall, you know, like literally walked into the wall, and boom, like that. And you know, she looks over, and you know, it's like. Yeah, that didn't even go well. So I mean, you have two great comic book artists that I admire to the utmost. I don't know, something lethal might happen to me. So yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I've met a few. I'm trying to think if I've done anything. You know, I've had some weird encounters. I remember I met Dan Burrington. He does Nocturnals, and he's more of a painter. He paints a lot of stuff, and I love his Nocturnals. But I remember meeting him at one convention, San Diego, and he must have been having a bad day because he was, you know, kind of a little off-putting and rude. He was talking to somebody else the whole time. I'm like, okay. And then I met him again years later at another convention. He was like super nice and like this. Either it was a bad day or he just eventually, you know, became a nice guy over time. I don't know. It was weird, but it was like I've met him twice and totally two different experiences. It is always kind of a danger meeting people you admire because they come off rude or whatever. You're just like, you know, I've had that happen. So sometimes they're better off just in your head. You know.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm one of those people that can't separate. If I really like the art, but then I find out something about the person that's completely abhorrent, I can't compartmentalize it. Now the art
I can't do that either.
Is tainted for me. You know, I can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. But there's some you expect. I mean, I know, like, I've heard enough stories about John Byrne. If I ever met John Byrne, I would expect, like, okay, yeah, this guy's going to be grouchy. I've heard many stories. So, you know, that wouldn't surprise me.
Well, I always feel, you know, like, you know, my martial arts background. So when all the martial arts masters meet each other, you know, we're all regular dudes. Most of us just have a regular day job and all this. But when we're in the tournament or stuff like that, we're all kind of amongst our people, right? So in a way, you're kind of seeing the real version of yourself. I feel like for a comic book professional, they're in their environment at a comic book convention, you know? So it's kind of telling. It's not like they're out of their environment or you caught them at a grocery store and, you know, hey, you're so-and-so. I always find that interesting. That's where you would like to think they'd be the most comfortable, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, Dustin. Hey, Dustin. Dustin commented. He had a question. He says, hey, can you guys recall your most memorable aha moment where everything clicked? Dustin, I'm not too sure if Dustin means like professionally or creatively. I guess a little bit of both. Does anybody have anything like that? A moment where some serendipitous moment where it all came together?
Professionally, working wise, no. I'm still hoping for that day where it all just clicks and it all becomes easy. But as you can see, what I'm doing now, it's so hard sometimes. And it doesn't. So I've been working on this page for 3 days, and it's even now I'm looking at it, I think, no, I don't think I like this. I think I'm going to scrap it, but we'll keep plugging away until I finally do give up. But yeah, it doesn't. There's no. I've not had an aha moment. This is how it's all going to go. And I don't.
You are a true artist then. If that's
Yeah, I don't. I don't know many people, many artists that have reached a point where it's like, wow, this is easy now. I can do it. This all works. I understand the principles and the basics behind everything, but yeah, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's easy.
Well, Dustin clarified. Yeah. Dustin said it's a little bit of both. A little bit of the creative, a little bit of like professionally what you've achieved. So, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think my book, since it's so long, I have learned to let things go, because if I didn't let some things go on pages, I'd still be in issue 1. So there's a lot, but again, if I was doing a book for somebody else, I would be much more pressure to get it right. So I think that's what, like, because Peter's doing it for other people, so I'd be like, well, I hope they like it, much. But if I'm doing it for me, I'm much more like, it communicates what I want to communicate. So, and the head may be a little off, the body may not be perfect, but I'm thinking, my book, when it's done, is going to be close to 300 pages. I'm like, if somebody's really, like my friend said, it's like, if somebody's really going to read that entire thing and point out that one panel, 300 pages, and be like, that's it, the entire comic is crap, then I guess bravo for them. But he just kind of helped me go. It's like, no one's going to notice that. I'm like, yeah, I know. I just got to let it go. But it's definitely hard, because there's some pages where I'd like, man, there's one page recently I did where I keep looking at one part of the panel. I'm like, it's still bothering me, but I'm just going to move on, and eventually it'll become a distant memory and try to look at it again.
Yeah, for me, it's in professionally and creatively. Like right now, I'm developing my comic book, and so I'm doing a lot of concept art, and there's a lot of bouncing back and forth, because I'll design. I'm really about the design, so I'll design one character and then I create another one. Okay, how are they going to interplay visually? Well, let me hop back and forth to switch things. But every now and then I'll have those aha moments. It doesn't mean that I want to wallow in it and pat myself on the back.
Yeah.
But you get those little rewards, where you go, okay, I think I'm getting this idea. Professionally, of course, when I first got to start working at Malibu, but I remember one of the funnest times was when Marvel had bought Malibu Comics. Stan Lee had a tour of the place, and the one thing I'll say about the Malibu Comics place is everybody was so cool and so supportive, especially for a young kid like I was back then. And so Stan Lee was walking through the hallway with Scott Rosenberg, who is the president of the company, and Scott saw me. He knew I'm like the resident comic book mascot kid. And he said, "Hey, Kurtis, come over here and meet Stan."
That's cool.
So yeah, so I'm walking over, and there's Stan Lee, and like true to life, he's got those crazy like auburn kind of tinted Ray-Bans.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Stan, this is Kurtis. He's our editor assistant." And Stan Lee goes, "Hi, Kurtis," and you hear Stan Lee say your name, right? And it's like every fiber of you being vibrated. So it was amazing. And then the other one was, and this is just. I love Stan Lee to death, like a lot of people, but I got to meet him twice. The first time, even before that, was I was at San Diego Comic Con, and Malibu was launching what's called the Ultraverse line. So we had ash cans, just like black and white comic books that we're handing out to people. And I'm this 15-year-old kid. Everybody's setting up the booth inside. I was sent outside to hand out these books. And hey, Katisi says hi. And as I'm standing out there, nobody will take these comic books because Ultraverse is an unproven commodity. So I'm trying to hand them, people walking by. All of a sudden, I see Stanley walking through the crowd, and he sees this gawky kid struggling to hand out these free comic books. He snaps his head, he stares at me, he walks straight through the crowd right at me, and he yells at me at the top of his lungs. He goes, "What do you got there?" I said, "Oh, it's an Ultraverse comic book, sir." He goes, "Give it to me. I want it." And he grabs the stack and then just storms off, right? Well, what does everybody do? Everybody starts walking up to me and taking the gun. I mean, what a class act, right? I mean, how could that not be attention? How could that not be that moment? And I mean, talk about don't meet your heroes in person. I mean, that was like, he was my superhero that day, right?
Yeah.
And wow, what a cool guy, So
Yeah,
that was
is
definitely
cool.
a humbling. Yeah. So, well, I think we're at the point now where we want to kind of maybe have our review. I don't know, Fred, if you're there, but usually at this point we go ahead and we have a review of our comic books by Wayne Hall. Okay. Yeah. So, Brett, when you're ready, let's go ahead. Let's have Wayne Hall give his independent comic book review.
Alrighty.
All right.
Hi, this is Wayne Hall back with another comic that you can buy through your local shop. Although I might change that a little this week to a comic that I bought in a local shop. And it's this crazy book right here. It's called Elmer. Let me read the description on top. It's the great Filipino novel with chickens. I'm sure I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but it's Jerry Alanguilan, I think. Let me read what the book is about to you. Elmer is a window into a world where chickens have suddenly acquired the intelligence and consciousness of humans, where they can now consider themselves a race no different than browns, blacks, or whites. Recognizing themselves to be sentient, the inexplicably evolved chickens push to attain rights for themselves as the newest members of the human race. Originally self-published by the author in the Philippines, this is the first U.S. edition of the book and the first edition to be made available to the book and library trade, and it looks very much like this one. It's a really interesting book. You understand, this book was actually printed in 2010. That's about 10 years ago, and that's several years before Animosity came out from Boom Studios. Animosity, of course, all the animals have a consciousness, and they can interact and talk, and they can think and plan, things like that. The only group that this hits in this book are the chickens, and you can see the Elmer is right there, the chicken of the good things. And it's a book that's done in black and white. And you can see, here's one of the chickens right there. And Farmer Ben is one of the guys that they interact with, who's really helpful to them. It just kind of comes out of the blue, and I don't think they ever explain how the chickens get that. But this is kind of a parable as to what it's like to be, persecuted and to be taken advantage of and things like that. Of course, the added element is the fact that a lot of people like to eat the chickens, and that's something that really is a fascinating part of it. What happens if something that you would normally prey upon was suddenly something intelligent enough to interact with you? And it's a fascinating story about that. I did want to mention a couple of things about this book. I said I bought this in a bookstore. There's a bookstore up in Maryland. It's near the University of Maryland. It's a comic book store, but they also sell other books. There was a guy who used to work there by the name of Topham, and he used to know that I liked variety in my reading. I liked things that were unusual, and they were a little different, and a little challenging were the kinds of things I liked. And so he was the one that suggested this book to me. And I took it home, and, at first I thought, a book about chickens. How good can this be? And then especially I looked and I saw the black and white inside, and I thought, ugh, this is not going to be good. But, hey, I trusted his judgment. I took it home. And one thing I should mention, too, is that this is a graphic novel for mature readers. You're going to see 4-letter words. You're even going to see some sexual circumstances in this book, believe it or not. And it's all about how these chickens, they're trying to make it in a world that wants to eat them, basically. And that's just a tough thing. It's not just enough to, they show them in parades and stuff like that. There's all kinds of things they're trying to do. It's really intelligently written. That's one of the things about this book that I really like. There's arguments among the chickens themselves as to how to get along. There are people who really are against them being treated fairly. And like I said, there's guys who want to eat them. And so it's just an amazing thing. It even gets to the United Nations at some point, all this whole thing. And so it's really a parable about people and how we treat people that are different from us. on a purest sense. Now remember, this is 2010. So this is a while back. Like I said, Animosity came along, and I remember when I read Animosity for the first time, and I looked down and there were two dogs at my feet, and I thought, what are they really thinking? You know, and this is the case, but it's a funny thing to say, but it's a very human story. It's a very compassionate story. It's, you know, even the chickens have a lot of variety amongst themselves. It starts out with one of the chickens, interestingly enough, who's applying for work, and you don't know it's a chicken right away. It takes a little while. And then we find out it's a chicken who's applying for a job. And he can see that there are humans around, and the humans are being treated a lot better than he ever would be. And he gets angry about it. He's got very bad temper, and he gets beaten up at this office, which is really weird. What's funny is when they have like holidays, they eat turkey. I found that really odd, the kinds of stuff. There's a lot of really interesting things about it, about how they interact with each other, about what kinds of things they do, and even their friends sometimes turn on them. So they can't really trust everybody, even each other. So it's a very strong parable about how we treat each other. And there's a picture I just passed that I wanted to show you guys. At some point, they all go nuts and they attack the chicken. The people do, because it's hard to change generations of people who have looked at them as nothing but food, and now suddenly have to interact with them. It's a really growing story, and it has an interesting ending too. You know, this is one of those books that has a beginning, middle, and end, which I know in comics is a real surprise. You know, X-Men have gone on for decades, and you've got to read every single issue to know what's going on. This book actually ends interestingly, which I liked. And I won't spoil it because I want people to read it. But the fact that it's in the Philippines is really something. Now, the guy who wrote it, I wanted to mention something into. He's a licensed architect, but he has spent years creating comic books. He's actually done work for Marvel and DC and Image, among other stuff. So you get a real interesting perspective on it. And it gives him a way of looking at things that other comics might not take, an approach they might not take. So let's get to the gradings. The writing, this was written and the artwork is all done by the same guy. The writing is pretty crisp, I have to say. The dialogue and stuff is really sharp. And the situations are really interesting too. And the characters are very well developed and interesting to read. So I'd have to give this an A. The artwork, I always kind of grade down when it's black and white. I would have been interested to see this in color, how that would have been. But I have to say the faces, two of the things I judge artwork on, faces, facial expressions, and action sequences. I showed you the one guy lunging at one of the chickens. And, you know, there's a lot of that kind of thing going on. There's a lot of activity. Here's that one again. I found that really, you know, you get a sense of what's going on immediately. So I think the art is good. I wish it was color instead of black and white. I would give it a solid B as a result of that. So the next thing is the lettering. And again, I think it's all done by the same guy. I always grade down on lettering because I always think there's some way to do it. Usually the lettering takes place at the top or the bottom of a panel. And it's okay. I give it a good B-, I think, on that was good. Literary merit. This is where I think this book is really interesting to read. I think this is a story, again, that I like to say is something even years from now people will read and get a lot out of, because it has profound stories, or profound things that it's dealing with, profound subject matter. So I give this a really good literary merit grade. I give it an A. Fun factor, yeah. By now, if you've watched my reviews, you know fun factor doesn't really happen in these books. There's a couple of crazy things that happen, but it's dark humor. I'd have to give it like a D as far as fun factor goes. Overall grade, I would give this a B+. If you haven't seen it and you get a chance to read Elmer, I would recommend it. It'll challenge your thinking. believe it or not, it's very compassionate, and it's very interesting on how we get to see things from the chickens' perspectives as well as the humans. So it's a really interesting book on that way. Overall grade, I'd have to give it a B+. It's really, 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 really good. Again, it's something different. I like something different. I want to go where I haven't been before. And that's what Elmer does. So, I highly recommend it. I know it's available on Amazon. I don't know if stores still get it, but it's definitely a book that I would say go after it because it's good stuff. And until next time, keep reading your comics.
All right, back to it. All right. Thank you very much, Wayne Hall, for your excellent review. I just noticed while we were talking here, Roland chimed in and he just wanted to let us know what some of his top picks are.
Okay.
So he said, his favorites are for indie comics are Bill Willingham's Elementals and of course Jeff Smith's Bone. So I think that's cool. Two different kind of titles. Kind of getting back into, we're going to continue talking about independent comics. Do you folks feel that there's certain kind of touch upon certain stories or types of stories that can be told in independent books that can't be told in mainstream, and vice versa? What are your thoughts?
I think there used to be, but I think now we're starting to see a little more of that bleed over. It used to be the big one with slice of life sort of tales. But now you've seen a lot of superhero, those writers going to superhero and kind of mixing superhero adventure with more like that sort of slice of life a little bit. I think I'm going to say probably horror because I don't see the mainstream doing horror, but I think independents, because the freedom, can do straight up good horror comics. That's my take, at least.
Yeah, they sort of shied away from horror, haven't they?
Yeah.
They're doing independents doing more and more of it now.
I would agree. What about you, Pete?
No, I don't know, because Marvel DC, they've touched on all those taboo subjects, or once were taboo subjects, and they sort of broke those. I just don't see it doesn't tend to be the sort of stuff that superheroes get into anymore.
I can kind of see it as subject matter, but the vehicle is different, right? Like if Marvel were to do a story about something controversial, they would most likely put it in the context of the superhero genre because that's what they do, But if you wanted to have that topic with, John and Jane Doe in the suburbs, that probably would be more of an, independent kind of story. Let's see. Other thoughts. What has there been any specific stories or books in the independent, genre that's inspired you or had an effect on you? Something that you kind of stand out, not just as a series, but like a specific story or arc that really stood out to you folks as far as something that inspired you or affected you.
It's funny. Affected my artwork. I think I was big in the Joe Mads Battle Chasers. I think that kind of, because I like fantasy. My stuff, I think, borderlines on fantasy, not straight D&D, but I wish there'd be more fantasy comics. You think like more of the people who play D&D would be in the comics, would be more fantasy comics, but they're actually kind of hard to find, at least on the Western front. More European does a lot of fantasy comics and stuff. But I have to say Battle Chase as far as like art style, and I refer to that a lot. But I have like a little stack. Ninja Turtles was a big one for me, the original Ninja Turtles.
Sure.
Because especially the original, because it was the fact that you can kind of mix this high adventure, but then like they were like this gritty, they were like teenagers. I mean, so it wasn't like they were typically like good people. I mean, the original Turtles would like drink beer and wear Metallica shirts. They were teenagers of the 80s, so I'm like, oh, that was kind of different. But very much more like in the vein of heavy metal and stuff. They would do some stuff like that. I do know
it was so gritty. I mean, even the visual, it was so. For those that don't know, if you look at those original issues, it was so gritty and so stark. It was so different. It was great stuff.
Yeah, I think one that stuck with me, maybe not to inspire me, but just because it stuck out at me is very interesting. Was not I think it was called Marzi, MARZI. I think that's what it was. I'm gonna have to look this up again. But it was this girl who lived in Poland during the communist regime, when the communist regime was falling. She lived as a little girl in a communist nation, and she wrote these like diary entries of her childhood living in this communist country, and it was fascinating. She did a good job writing it. I remember reading that book, and I thought the one thing I took away from it was like, well, that's kind of cool, actually writing a comic like diary entries, or like individual like 3 or 4 page little strips that combined together form this book. Kind of Dracula, I think, was written in journal entries. The original Dracula,
Yes,
but
it was.
that kind of context I thought was like, well, that's kind of an interesting approach to comics I've never seen before. So that kind of got me ideas. I like to play with formats, different ways of trying new ways of delivering content instead of just the main book or whatever.
Totally. I mean, I always think about, it's kind of overly stated, but I mean, of course, Mouse, right? Mouse, like as far as independence, I mean, what a masterpiece, and it feels so intimate the way it's drawn. Where it's not like very refined looking. It's almost like it is almost like a journal way. The line weight's almost the same throughout.
Yeah.
It's a smaller format. But so consistent all the way through. I think that's definitely a great fit for me. Also, Ninja Turtles, but also Ninja High School was one that I got a hold of.
Oh yeah.
And that was and it's funny. That's what got me into anime and manga of all things, was this American,
Ninja High School, yeah.
Ninja High School was just insane. I was listening to a podcast recently, and they had Chris on, one of the heads of Malibu, and he was saying of all the things that they did in Malibu, that was one of his favorite books. It was just so out there. It was crazy,
I think, and I tended to enjoy more independence because they were out there, like Ninja Turtles for Existence. I mean, I think halfway through they get shot into space and they're fighting like dinosaur space soldiers, triceratons, and there was the one thing that me and my friend Tom have talked about a lot about. What was it about that comic that was so exciting? There was an air of that anything could happen in the comic, and when anything happened, it didn't feel forced. Where some people, like when they do comics, like, we have pirates and ninjas and astronauts, and it feels very forced, but that comic never did. And we were always trying to so what was it about the energy they were bringing that made well, yeah, you can introduce like space triceraton dinosaurs, and it feels completely natural. It's like, how were they doing that? And Independence, I think, captured that a little more. Superheroes a little bit, but it seems like they always kind of seem more refined. I think there were certain eras of superheroes that felt that way, that anything could happen.
Absolutely. Cedric Boyd just chimed in. Cedric says, y'all are incredible artists. Looking forward to the new issue of Cat and Mouse and Trump's #1. Thank you, Cedric. And it sounds like you supported us on Kickstarter, so thank you very much, because of folks like you that were able to make these books. And Pete's got just a phenomenal cover for the issue. Who inked that, Pete? Was that Barb or?
No, it was Tommy.
Was Tommy?
That
okay.
Tommy?
Yeah.
And then Roberta colored it. Yeah, did a great job on it.
Yeah. The first time I saw it, the first thing I felt was like, this was like a classic, awesome console cover where it's not like a pinup. It's like you're seeing like this splash page of something happening in the issue, and it draws you.
Yeah.
You guys did a great job.
Which I sometimes miss that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So is there here's like, super fanboy question. Is there an indie book that's no longer published that you folks would say, oh my gosh, I want that to come back with? Before we do that, we have a special guest coming in. She must have heard talking to our name. We have our Colors Supreme, Roberta Conroy, coming in. Hello. Welcome, Roberta.
Hey, Roberta.
Hello. We were just talking about your great work and that cat and mouse cover that you did. That was just stellar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been so fun. I really am grateful and happy to be a part of Cat and Mouse now.
Definitely. I kind of introduced you. Would you mind introducing yourself, giving the full official introduction for yourself, Roberta?
Yeah, sure. I'm Roberta Conroy. I'm a former Malibu artist. I've been a colorist off and on for quite some time now. And I'm a recent addition to Silverline. And I've been coloring a black and white comic called Pendulum, which you'll see a little more of today. And now I will be coloring Cat and Mouse from here on out.
Great.
Oh, nice.
I think Pendulum's, by John Drury, and it's this kind of kind of pulpy noir kind of superhero.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Really. Did you wanna do some work now on it, Roberta? Or
I could. I was
Yeah,
still
kick me
moving my
off.
pallets
Kick me off.
around, so sure.
Okay.
Because all I'm doing is
whenever you're
buildings.
ready.
I do
Yeah, I
have to
know.
figure out Zoom a little more.
Yeah, can we
Okay.
stop watching Peter just draw straight lines
Yeah.
all night?
What? You don't like
No.
straight lines?
What? I love straight lines.
That's so satisfying.
How do I stop sharing this now?
Let's see. There we go.
How's
There you
that?
go.
Thanks,
All right, thank you.
Roberta.
Nice,
Very
colorful.
cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. I like it. Very
So
cool.
joining midstream, how's the conversation going?
I can't remember, what are we talking about?
We kind of were arguing, and it had gone into complete pandemonium. But your soothing presence has
Oh,
come.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, Kurtis is a real, he's
Tyrant.
driving that conversation. It's funny, every time I say something, he keeps just telling me wrong. And
Oh my goodness.
I'm officially drunk with power, is what.
he is. He's officially
Oh.
drunk with power being the moderator.
Finally.
You're supposed to be the voice of reason.
Oh,
Yeah.
don't ask my wife about that. We'll see how that goes.
Mhm. All right. Well,
we were
I got to
talking-
get started coloring then.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So I think we were just kind of going over talking about, of course, independent comic books, and we were saying what independent comic books, if there was one that's a defunct, or no longer published, what would you like to see come back with, of course, the original team,
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
To me, it still would have to be that Red Star comic.
Red
I know I read that again. I love it. I still read it. Come to the end, and it's just kind of this sad face. So I just kind of have to infer where they're gonna go to. But it's funny. A lot of the ones I still like. It's like you, Jimbo, and they're still like a lot of the ones I like. They're still kind of going, or have ended. I would say maybe the original. Another Turtle Kick. Like they're still doing the Ninja Turtles, but the original team, they come
Well,
back.
they're back, right? I heard that they're coming back, right? Eastman and Laird are teaming up again. There's something.
Are they really?
Yeah, I heard they are. Yeah.
Oh, I did not hear that.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so
So,
get ready.
maybe I do have.
Yeah,
Okay.
just last week, I think Aaron was saying, it's like a drug when you discover comic books, you're trying to get that first fix, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you're ever gonna have that opportunity, like there's a
This
small
might be
window.
it.
Get ready, get your money ready,
Okay, good. Wow, that's
Yeah.
kind of cool. I did not know that.
Yeah,
Strangely enough, I have no idea. I really liked Mouse Guard, and I don't know if he's still doing stuff. He had this.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
good, isn't it?
He kind of faded, so I don't know if he's still doing stuff. That's one I would like to see come back on a more regular, or just have something else come out from the original artist.
Well,
He did
I
it.
saw him in Comic-Con last time I went, which was I think 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. I chuckled there because Dustin Wallace just chimed in. I think he was talking about how we were talking about the straight lines. Pete was drawing. He just said straight lines. So it sounds like he's a big fan of straight lines.
Wow.
Dustin, just to let you know, all of our Silverline comics have excellent straight lines. I would
Nice.
venture to say the best straight lines in the industry, bar none. So please keep supporting us.
I'm sure you'll still
Computer-generated straight lines the best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll love straight lines after drawing them for 3
I
days.
don't like computer-generated straight lines. I feel like if it doesn't have a little wobble in it, you just ignore it.
Oh.
Yeah. It can make it look very sterile sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Although I gotta say, as somebody that uses clips to paint, the fact that there's a perspective ruler is like a godsend.
Oh,
I
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
absolutely
quick.
adore that. It's so nice. It's so nice not having to put the pins on like the other sides of the draft board now.
Yeah, and try to figure out. Most of the time, I just guess it, and we go from there.
Yeah.
Hail Mary. Yeah,
Yeah.
and just guess it for the most part.
Something like
That looks
yeah.
about right.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause-
One independent book that I never read. I'm curious if you folks read it, but I've always kind of kicked myself in the rear for not doing this. I never read Dave Sim's Cerebus, and I know that's like one of the most prolific of all
Yeah.
independent books of all time. Has anybody read that?
I tried to read it and couldn't get into it. I tried.
Yeah.
What was it?
Cerebus.
Cerebus.
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I
I've
never
heard-
read it. No, sorry. Did
Yeah.
not know.
It's
I mean,
a classic.
How many volumes? I mean, it's
There's, like,
crazy, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be was it 6 volumes? But he was supposed to be the entire lifespan of this aardvark character. And
Yeah.
no, it's funny. I've thought about going back and reading it maybe someday. There's been a few series that I've gone back and even reread and be like, nah, it didn't really work for me the first time. Like I think when I went into I was a big fan of Conan and wanted more like a Conan a barbarian. It starts out that way, but then very quickly goes into more politics and other stuff. I'm like, I'm not really into that.
Wow, disappointing.
Yeah. I think one thing that you see more in independent books than anything else is the idea of a finite story, right? And I think when we talk about our favorite superheroes and all that, that's a torch that gets handed off generation to generation to generation, and that's great. But like something like we're talking about Cerebus or other books, and even Japanese manga has that idea of the lifespan, right, from the beginning of the story to the end. I think that's unique, fairly unique.
I think that's been one of the big problems. I think it's always kind of been a problem a little bit in comics for a lot of the mainstream, is because people like, when do you jump on? I'm like, anytime, I guess. And then like, when do you jump out? I'm like, well, that's the question. It's not ever going to end. So you just kind of have to figure out, either you get tired of it, you find something else, or you just leave. But it seems like since those characters go and go, that sometimes there can never be like that definitive sort of closure of that character. And I think independents do a good job of making those sort of ending. And I think stories can be stronger when they're working towards an ending or a climax, to be a finality. Instead of just like, well, we can't do this to Superman or Batman because he's got to continue on. And so there are certain things that are like, they kill Batman. Oh, he's not really dead, because they have to continue to publish more Batman books. So, I mean,
Well, then you have the odd one where, okay, this is the last Batman story, or this is the last, let's jump all the way to the end,
Yeah.
And that always comes off a little insincere, a little bit of a sales play. One thing I'll say about just the comic book medium in general, but you kind of feel it even more in independence, this idea that it's almost like you're looking over the shoulder of the author, the penciler, the inker, everybody. You don't really get that at any other art form. I mean, if you read a novel, it's still typeset and done. It's still sterilized, removed from that original person. In film, I mean, how many people between the director or the scriptwriter, right? Mm-hmm. But there's such an immediacy in this art form. I would say more than any other art form. That's one of the great things that we still have in comic books, is that you're really in there with the creators. That's really cool. Yeah.
And it's really cool to see their interpretation. I mean, I've seen a lot of independents really do different things with art styles and stuff. Like one person did, I don't remember the comic, but it was almost like this impressionist painting type style that was very simplistic. Never seen anything like that. And so you really get some interesting styles and stuff that bring that immediacy. Like this is like, you feel like this guy's just playing around with an art form, and you get to kind of read what the result of like this experiment or whatever he was doing, how it came out.
Well, totally. There's a mainstream comic book, but it felt independent. Did you folks ever read? I forget who worked. I think Louise Simonson may have written it. It was Meltdown. It was Havoc and Wolverine, but it was all watercolor.
Oh yes, I think I still have those. And
that was really cool.
That was Wolverine's hair was like just big and spiky, but I remember it was like Havoc in him, but it was so different. And I always liked books that tried different art styles or tried experimentation. I think independents have the advantage of being able to experiment and get away with it. People embrace it. Well, like if you try experiments with mainstream, like, nah, Batman doesn't look like that. I'm like, okay. So
definitely. Well, Roberta, we earlier we were just talking generally about our favorite independent books. Do you have any top favorites you'd like to showcase? Anything that?
Just starting with this one I got a few years back called Mechanica.
Mechanica?
Have you heard of that?
I know a comic called Lady Mechanica.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and the art is really dramatic.
Really?
And
is it sci-fi, or what is it? The genre?
I don't know if I could get it.
Okay.
No, it's just it's one of many people that, when you're going around and you don't see, you don't see enough of anybody's artwork. So someone will catch your eye in a convention, and you're just like, wow, I love this, and that's how it works. That's how independents, to me, work.
Yeah.
It's just this factor.
That's what I love so much about conventions, Artist Alley. I spend all the time looking at all the independent. I mean, I've seen the mainstream stuff, so I don't really go to a lot of vendors to get comics. I want to go see the people that I can't get their stuff in stores because they're only there. I love doing that stuff.
Well, and also like, nowadays the buzzword, right, in the entertainment industry is like representation and diversity and all that.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of times it feels half removed. It's this person, it's a story about this ethnic group, but it's told from these creators from this other group. And I think again the immediacy, right? I know there's an artist named Gene Yun Lin. He's a Chinese American. He did a book called ABC, which means American Born Chinese, right? So it's
cool.
really immediate because you're seeing his story from his cultural background, told by him, literally drawn by him, right? So you can't get more, direct from that. I think we were talking about the Hernandez brothers are the same thing. I mean, you really feel like you're in there, Yeah, I just think, independents are great because there's so much opportunities for people to tell different stories,
Yeah.
Definitely.
We have a freedom, don't you? There's a freedom with independent comic books. You're not tied to continuity and this character can't do this and this character can't kill this person. And you just, there's a freedom.
Even the format, right? I mean, like the shape of the page could be different. It could be a small square book. Or I saw one book. It was all one panel. I mean, it was like a letterbox. I think it was a Travis Terresting, but it was like a letterbox panel, and you just flip it. Each page is a different panel. Wow. It was really cool.
Interesting.
Yeah. I like like I said, I experimented with one of my books that was like kind of like in a children's book format, but each page was a picture, and I wrote the dialogue more like a kind of not like a rhyming, but like a stanza that had like a beat to it. And it straddled the line between, I guess, comic, because I comic book art. My art's very comic bookish, but it kind of straddled the line in the format that set it more like a kid's book. And but then again, it goes like, is that a comic book or is that it's like, I don't know. But I think independents, had the ability to experiment with that. And I did show it to a few professionals like Jim Valentino and stuff. And Jim Valentino, he was a really nice guy. He's like, he's like, I like this. He's like, if I saw this in the store, I'd buy it. He's like, but I wouldn't know how to sell this because it's so different. And I took that as a great compliment. The fact that he liked it, but he's like, I just don't know how to do it. But yeah, I still like that. Some, like you said, Travis Tress did the one panel. That every once in a while you see people who experiment with the idea of like pictures and words and see, can you do other things besides the basic comic layout? And I think some of that stuff's really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, that's not to negate the mainstream. I mean, it's amazing what people do with the art form.
Yeah.
It's just interesting when the horizons open up a little differently. So, yeah, definitely. So we were saying Turtles will be one book that is no longer with the original team. It would be kind of like a dream book that's kind of resurrected. Any others? Anybody else have any?
Yeah, I'm just checking on the title. I think it's called Arrowsmith.
Arrowsmith is great. I actually have that graphic novel over there. Yeah.
Based in, was it World War II?
Yeah, and they had like magic.
Magic, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was Kurt Busiek, wasn't it? Busiek? And Carlos, I can't pronounce Carlos Pacheco.
Pachella. Yeah.
I picked that book up and I thought it was the best thing in the world. I thought, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think it ran for like, was it 6 issues or something like that?
Yeah, it's like one. I've only found one graphic novel of it.
Yeah, and I was like, I want to read more of this because I think this is brilliant. And I would love to.
Arrowsmith?
Yeah, it's worth checking out.
Yeah, and the art's beautiful, and I think it's just one word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Check that out.
But it's such a beautiful and cool book, and I was like, I desperately wanted. And and the artist, I won't say his name, so I don't think I can get it right. But after that, anytime I saw him on a book, I'd pick it up. Yeah, I love this guy's art. And that's how it works.
He did it. I first saw him in Avengers story called Avengers Forever. That he did a really good job, and then I started hunting his art down too, and that's why I found Arrowsmith. And but yeah, there's some. I'm trying to think. I know there's got to be more series that I have. A lot of the times, independents do finish their series. Not all the time, but some. I guess Battle Chasers would be one I would love to come back. Joe Matt is in video games now. He brought out a video game based on Battle Chasers, but I'd like to just, if anything, just have a complete story. Because it literally is one of those, like I have a hardcover that has like pages from like issue 10, where it's just kind of like you can see that what we're working on, but you'll never know what it's about because it's no one's okay, whatever.
Well,
So,
it's funny. It's funny because I always feel like, and all of you know this as creators, right? It's like, let's give 100% to get something done. Okay. Sometimes that first 80% flies through, but that last 20% feels like another 80% sometimes. Just finishing it off, right? It's just like this. It's like this insurmountable thing that happens at the end because life, who knows what else, right? Dustin Wallace chimed in. I think he was talking about Aerosmith. I think we kind of covered it, but maybe you can give a little bit more insight. He wants to know, what is it about? So you said it was World War II?
1 second.
I'm going to have to Google it because I can't remember.
Okay.
Aerosmith Comics. All right, okay. So forgive me because I'm just reading Wikipedia because I'll just get it wrong otherwise.
Actually, go ahead, keep talking. This is an active habit with me.
Nice.
Oh, do you? Well, do that.
Yeah.
That's
so that I don't know, pulling it back.
Oh, that looks really good.
Yeah, the artwork inside is fantastic. But he's like, I think he's a World War II vet or in a war, and then it's like magic and dragons. Keep going. I had that. I'm like, well, I can show.
Yeah, get it. Where was I? Going back to Google. On Google. It's alternate history. Earth, in which the United States of America is actually the United States of Colombia. Magic is real, and the First World War is fought with and by dragons, spells, vampires, and all other kinds of magic weapons and beings. The story follows protagonist Fletcher Arrowsmith as he joins the war effort on the side of the Allies, gets taught in sorcery, and engages in brutal battles with the enemy. Loved it.
Very cool. Well, Dustin says that's a cool cover. Yeah, that was awesome. It reminds me, there was this one book that I think it was Vertigo published for a little while, but it was called Mob Fire. I forget who the creators on it were. Mob Fire, it was the mafia with magicians. So it was like all these Italian mafiosos,
that's cool.
But then their enforcers were all magicians, and it was just like really intense and dark. And every now and then you get a really cool, it's like a pitch meeting, right? Just that idea is cool.
Yeah, and there was I have to say, I probably speaking, I keep going back to that. There'd be one comic. Well, it's been a while since I've read it, but there's one called Leave It to Chance that these guys did. And it was almost kind of like a magic, like Monsters and Magic, but a little bit of like this girl who's a detective. It's almost like Tintin mixed with like it was about 3 hardcover books. What?
Paul Smith? Was that the one that Paul Smith drew?
It might, I have it in my bookshelf right now. It's been a while, but I remember like really liking them and really well done. And now I can't remember if they ended the story. Each story was like an individual story, so I guess it's one of those ones that technically could end anytime it wants. But I really liked that series, and it was only like 3 volumes, and it might have been him. I'm not sure.
I love his art. The other one, another indie one that I never got into, I think it also kind of fell in the line of Cerebus, where it's just like it just seems almost insurmountable to start. ElfQuest. I never read ElfQuest.
I love ElfQuest. Yeah, I loved it.
Did you read the whole thing, or?
No, it's too big.
Yeah. It's funny. I had the first 4 volumes, like the initial quest, which you get 4 volumes. They actually end the story enough there that the ending you could just completely end it, and then they started making more. I just read the initial story. I know there's like phone books of it. I haven't read it. I just stick to that original story and seem to be satisfied. One, I guess maybe because I just don't really want to go. Like I'm like put that on my list of stuff to go buy. But I remember like later on they started, like I've heard like it was kind of hit or miss, but that initial story seemed very complete. That when I came to the end, and I'm that way with series. Sometimes I'll read to a certain point and be like, oh, I like that ending. I'm done. And I did that for Strange. I've never actually finished the entire Strangers in Paradise. I was a big fan of them, but I came to a certain point in the comic where it felt like it was an ending, and then I, for some reason, just never continued to read it. I still need to go back and finish the series. I've never finished it. I don't know, that way sometimes. But ElfQuest had that.
Yeah, just kind of, we're talking, of course, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, several times. And to kind of bring it full circle, I kind of feel like that is the perfect example. We're talking about, let's define the difference between mainstream and independent. Look at the original Eastman and Laird, and that's an independent version of a comic book. And then look at what Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles became.
Yes.
And how overly saturated and kind of bloated it became, and how ubiquitous it became in popular culture. That would be the mainstream version. You could almost carve a direct example between those 2 iterations of the same franchise. and you can kind of see where it goes. Neither one is better than the other, but they are different.
Yeah, they are definitely different. You can. I was actually one that I never really liked the cartoon again because I was a fan of the comic and the cartoon was like
Oh, yeah.
I when I heard the cartoon I'm like, wow, they're gonna make a cartoon out of this badass. And of course I was like, wait, the cartoon is that? Wait, that's not the Turtles I remember, because they got the little L's and M's and they got the different colored masks. And so I mean, over time I'm like, okay, that's I can separate them. I remember as a kid watching it and I came home was so excited to watch it. And then I was like, wait, that's not them. This is weird. And so yeah.
Wait. So
And
the comics, they didn't have blue and red and yellow and
no, it was all red. They were all red. This is
Oh,
why I actually have
that's right, it was. Yeah, no, that's not cool.
yeah, because I actually have like the original Turtles, like these action figures in my room with the original, and I've had friends come in like, you really like Raphael, and I'm just like,
yeah, and they were kind of emaciated looking, and they had almost like a snout. They were yeah, it was like the regular Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If they didn't eat pizza, that's what the old ones gonna look like.
Yeah, it's I know it's in mainstream, but I was happy they put hardcovers of the original comics out. IDW did the reprints, and I was just like happy to get those again because my original graphic novels when I was a kid, they're like all beat up and stuff. So to get some nice new versions of the book was worth it.
Yeah, I may have mentioned this before, but when I was a kid in Hawaii, Eastman and Laird came to signing at the comic book shop in Hawaii, and I still remember Kevin Eastman had his sketchbook there, and people were signing stuff, and it was just early on when the popularity was starting to go up, and I remember one guy went to Kevin Eastman and was like, hey, he was like, I'll give you $40 for your sketchbook, and he's like, okay, and the guy literally just handed Eastman like $40, and he got this sketchbook of original sketches by Kevin Eastman, and just like walked out the door with it, Yeah,
nice.
you just go.
Back at that time, they're probably hurting for money. He's probably like, I can buy another sketchbook. Take it,
Yeah, totally. Well, I think we're getting close to that time. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add as we kind of close things up?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, just kind of, I think the biggest thing about independent comics is that independent spirit. So everybody that's watching, if you're interested in being a creator, don't let the fact that you may have a hard time finding somebody to publish or whatever prevent you from creating something. We're in a day and age where you can do that. You always want to do your best, and reception is something completely different. But don't be shy about creating. That's kind of, we say, the independent spirit in any art form. So as we sign off, I'll go ahead and just kind of say where you can find me, and I'll put the word out. So again, I'm Kurtis Fujita. You can find me on Facebook. It's Kurtis with a K, last name Fujita. You can find me on Facebook. You can also find me on Instagram, on YouTube under my martial arts school. So that's Tiger Crane 805. And also, you can find me in those places. I'm going to hand off to Pete. And before we have Pete, are you still doing commissions right now, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so
Bill's
Pete's
paid
doing
this
some
week,
great
so
commissions.
definitely doing commissions. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he has some great art. I'll hand over to Pete. But you guys, this is like a great opportunity to get a really good artist to do your own work.
So you guys can contact me on Instagram or Facebook Messenger, or Twitter if you wish. It's all Peter Clinton Art. I'm doing a sale at the moment on 11x17 black and white. So they're 100 British pounds for 11x17 inked. So I don't know what that works out in dollars. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
And plus shipping. But otherwise, contact me for anything, really.
Definitely. If I can chime in, Pete, you open your mind about this opportunity, because it's not just like a comic book cover. I know people play D&D or stuff like that. You have that one character that you've been playing for years. You want a custom illustration of this specific character. Pete, I've seen his work. Not only does he excel at superhero stuff, he has some excellent fantasy style stuff. So that's another option.
Whatever you like. I'm doing a cover recreation for someone at the moment.
Cool.
So that was quite cool. So I've got to do the entire, put new characters in for the original characters who are there, and do the title of the book and the little thing in the corner with the number and the date. So that's that's different. So anything you like.
And where can they find you online? How can they contact you?
Yeah, Peter Clinton Art. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram is the best. But it's all Peter Clinton Art, one word. Simples.
Very good. And Aaron, how about you?
You can find me on Facebook. I have a Humphres illustration. I think my name shows up here, so it's HUMPHRES. I think it shows up on the stream. It's a Humphres illustration, one word. That also is my portfolio site, my art site, and then I think I also have a store, which is I think linked to my site, and also which is Humphres Illustration at like bigcartel.com is my store. So if you're interested in checking out the books I make of the art, that's where they go. Facebook. I also have Aaron Humphres there. And for my Instagram, I'm thinking to change this eventually. It's ALH3810 is my handle. And you can find me on there, but I need to change that, so that might be changing soon. I think that's all where you can find me most of the time, hanging out. Mostly Facebook. I'm pretty active on Facebook. I like Instagram too, but Facebook, people can write me back more immediate. It seems like.
Very good. And Roberta, how about yourself?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook mostly. I think that's where I stay. I have an Instagram account under Roby Conroy, ROBI Conroy. And I have a website about the same, robyconroy.com, if you want to check that out too. But anyway, I'm around.
Excellent. And I see Dustin just kind of jumped in. He said, "Awesome show, guys." Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And our special technician behind the scenes, Brett. Brett, Brett's a competitive gamer in PUBG, and he's climbing the ranks of it. Brett, is there anything, any contact information, places people can find you on Twitch that you'd like us to share? All right, so you can find him. His Twitch name is Red Rider NA. And is that RIDER or is it RYDER? All right, so Red RYDER. N is in Nancy, is in Apple, on Twitch. And he's doing a great job competing, and we appreciate all his hard work. So as we sign off, we want to thank everybody again for supporting our recent Kickstarter. We couldn't have done it without you.
Absolutely.
We're committed to making great books, great content, great experiences for everybody. So continue supporting us, and we'll keep doing that for you. And until next time, we ask you to
make mine
Silverline.
It was everybody.
I know.
Everybody.
Everybody just dropped. Just go quiet when Peter starts to say it.
That's okay. All right, everybody. Have a good night, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.